On the red planet Zorath, the ground never stayed still. It trembled under the feet of warriors who lived for battle. The air was hot, filled with the sound of steel clashing and fire bursting from alien weapons. Among all those warriors, one name made even the bravest soldiers tremble: Lyra, the Untamed. Lyra was not born into peace. From childhood, she was trained to fight, to kill, and never to bow. Her tribe, the Vakar, believed only in strength. The weak were left behind. The strong ruled. And Lyra, she ruled all. Her body was built like a weapon. Her silver eyes burned like lightning, and her twin energy blades were feared across 3 moons. No one dared to challenge her. Not anymore. They called her the Storm Queen, though she bowed to no king. Once a warlord tried to tame her. He ended up begging for death. Another offered her power and riches. She laughed and burned his ship down with his army inside. Lyra was untouchable, unbroken, unloved. For years she fought wars without reason, just to prove no one could defeat her. But sometimes, when the stars were quiet, she stood alone on the cliff of black sand looking at the endless night. The wind whispered like voices from her past. She remembered her sister, small, kind, and gentle, who had once told her that real strength came from protecting, not destroying. But her sister was gone, lost in a war Lyra couldn't stop. Since then, she had buried every feeling deep inside. Then one day, everything changed. A fleet of human explorers entered Zorath's orbit. They came for peace, for trade, or maybe for secrets. But the Vakars saw them as intruders. The Alien War Council ordered their capture. In the attack, most humans were killed or taken prisoner. Among the survivors was Captain Ryan Hale, a soldier from Earth. Ryan was unlike anyone the Vakars had ever seen. He was calm even when captured. His eyes were steady, not wild with fear. When Lyra's guards dragged him into the war camp, she expected him to scream or beg. Instead, he looked at her like he already knew her story. That single look, steady, fearless, made something twist inside her chest. "Another human?" Lyra asked coldly, stepping closer. "Do you know where you are?" Ryan didn't flinch. "In the middle of a war zone," he said simply. "And speaking to the one who commands it." Her soldiers gasped at his tone. No one dared speak to her like that. Lyra's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, something sharper. "You have courage," she said. "But courage without strength means death." Ryan tilted his head. "Then kill me," he said. "But first tell me, does killing still give you peace?" The camp went silent. Lyra froze. His question hit deeper than any blade. For a moment, the firelight flickered across her face, showing something no one had seen before. Uncertainty. But she quickly hid it, turning away. "Take him to the cage," she ordered. "Tomorrow I'll see if his courage survives the night." That night, Lyra sat by the campfire, unable to rest. She kept thinking about his words. No one had ever asked her if she had peace. Everyone either feared her or tried to use her. But that human, he looked at her as if she was something more than just a weapon. In the darkness, Ryan sat behind the energy bars of his cage, humming softly to himself. When Lyra walked past, he stopped. "Why don't you sleep?" she asked. "Can't," he said. "Too quiet," she frowned. "You call this quiet?" He nodded. "Where I come from, quiet means peace. Here, quiet feels like it's waiting for something." Lyra stared at him. "What are you waiting for?" Ryan smiled faintly. "To understand why someone so strong looks like she's fighting herself." For the first time in years, Lyra didn't know what to say. She turned and walked away. But her mind didn't let her forget his words. The next day, the tribe gathered. Lyra ordered Ryan brought out for questioning. The human walked calmly, even as the alien guards shoved him forward. Lyra circled him like a predator. "Tell me, human," she said, her voice echoing through the camp. "Why did your kind come here?" Ryan looked around at the alien faces staring at him. "To learn," he said. "To see what makes your people fight so hard to survive." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "And what have you learned?" "That fear rules this place," Ryan replied. "And you," he pointed at her, "you fear nothing except yourself." Gasps erupted. Her guards raised their weapons. But Lyra lifted her hand, stopping them. She stepped closer, eyes flashing. "You think you know me?" she hissed. "I think," Ryan said quietly. "You've forgotten what you were fighting for." The silence that followed was heavy, burning. For the first time, someone had looked past her strength and seen the truth. Lyra turned sharply and walked away, but her steps were unsteady. Every word he spoke replayed in her head. She could crush him easily, yet she couldn't silence that voice. That night, storm clouds gathered over Zorath. Lightning split the dark sky. Lyra stood on the cliff again, the wind whipping through her hair. She looked at the human camp below and wondered why his words mattered so much. He was only one man, one weak creature among billions, yet somehow he had seen the storm inside her, the one she never showed anyone. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would change her life. Because the untamed warrior who bowed to no one was about to meet the only person who could truly tame her heart. And in the distance, thunder answered like fate itself. The next morning on planet Zorath was filled with smoke and cold wind. The alien suns rose behind gray clouds, throwing long shadows over the Vakar war camp. Warriors were already awake, sharpening their weapons, preparing for another day of battle. But their leader, Lyra, could not sleep. The human's words still echoed in her mind. "You've forgotten what you were fighting for." No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared. Lyra walked through the camp slowly, her long armor cloak brushing against the ground. Everyone bowed their heads as she passed. They called her Commander, Storm Queen, and Untamed. But this morning, those words felt empty. At the far end of the camp, inside an energy cage, sat Captain Ryan Hale. His eyes were tired, but his spirit was not broken. He sat cross-legged, calm as a mountain. When Lyra stopped in front of the cage, he looked up at her, without fear. "You're awake," she said. "I never really slept," Ryan replied. "Your world doesn't rest, does it?" Lyra tilted her head. "Only the weak rest. The strong never stop," Ryan gave a faint smile. "Then maybe that's why you look so tired." Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your words, human. You live only because I allow it." "Then why allow it?" Ryan asked quietly. "Why haven't you killed me?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she turned and ordered the guards to release him. The aliens hesitated but obeyed. The energy bars faded and Ryan stepped out. "Follow me," Lyra said coldly. "Let's see what you're really made of." They walked across the camp to the training arena, a large circle of sand surrounded by hundreds of alien warriors. The crowd gathered quickly, whispering and laughing. They thought this human would die in seconds. Lyra picked up her twin energy blades, their blue light flickering in the wind. Ryan stood across from her, unarmed. "Take a weapon," she said. "You'll need it." He shook his head. "No, if I can't win with my mind, no weapon will help." Her lip twitched, half amusement, half annoyance. "You really don't fear death, do you?" "Not anymore," Ryan said. "I've seen too much of it." The air went still. For a moment their eyes met, and something invisible passed between them. Respect, curiosity? Either could name it. "Begin," shouted one of the guards. Lyra moved like lightning, her blades slicing through the air. But Ryan didn't fight back. He ducked, rolled, dodged. He moved not like a soldier, but like someone reading her movements, studying her rhythm. "Fight back," Lyra roared. Ryan shook his head. "You're not my enemy." Her anger rose. She attacked harder, faster. Sparks flew as her blade struck the stone floor near his feet. Still, he didn't raise a hand. Finally, Lyra stopped, breathing hard. "Why don't you fight?" she demanded. Ryan looked straight at her. "Because I see no monster here, only someone who's been fighting for too long." The arena went silent. Even the wind paused. Lyra's grip on her blades loosened. For a second, her fierce mask cracked. But then pride returned, strong and sharp. "You talk like you understand me," she said coldly. "But you don't. You never will." Ryan took a slow step forward. "Then teach me." Her heart skipped once. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not with fear, but with honesty. Days passed. Lyra didn't kill Ryan. Instead, she gave him small tasks, training her soldiers in human tactics, helping repair their machines. She told herself it was only to learn from him. But deep down, she wanted to understand him. Ryan never argued, never tried to escape. He worked silently, always calm. The tribe began to notice. Some called him brave. Others whispered that he was dangerous, that he had found a way to reach their untamed leader's heart. One night, Lyra found him sitting by a broken engine, staring at the stars. "Do humans really live under one sun?" she asked quietly. Ryan looked up, surprised she spoke first. "Yes, just one. But we dream of others." Lyra folded her arms. "And why come to ours?" "To find life," Ryan said. "To learn from others. To see what we could become." Lyra looked at the stars. "And what have you learned from us?" He turned to her. That even the strongest can be lonely. Lyra froze. His words hit her harder than any weapon. She tried to hide her feelings with a smirk. Careful, human. Loneliness can kill faster than any blade. Ryan smiled softly. Then maybe you should stop letting it. For a moment they just stood there, two souls from different worlds bound by silence. The next morning, Lyra's second-in-command, Varric, confronted her. You're changing, my queen, he said. That human, he poisons your strength. Lyra's eyes turned cold. He teaches me nothing but discipline. Discipline? Varric spat. He makes you weak. You speak instead of strike. You hesitate. Lyra stepped closer, her voice like steel. Do you question me, Varric? He bowed his head quickly. Never, my queen. But remember, humans lie, and he's one of them. When he left, Lyra stood still for a long time. Deep inside, she knew Varric was wrong, but also right. She was changing, and she didn't know if that was strength or weakness. That night, Lyra went to Ryan's tent. He was asleep, his face calm even in the cold alien air. For a moment, she just watched him. The human looked fragile, yet there was something unbreakable in him. Why are you here, Ryan Hale? She whispered. What are you trying to do to me? His eyes opened slowly. I'm trying to remind you that strength isn't only in battle, he said softly. Lyra stepped back, startled. She hadn't meant for him to hear. Ryan sat up. You've spent your life fighting everyone. Maybe it's time to fight for something. Lyra looked away, her heart pounding. And what would that be? Ryan's voice was quiet, but it cut through the night. Maybe yourself. That night, the firelight danced on her armor. For the first time, the great untamed warrior felt something she couldn't name. Doubt mixed with hope. She didn't know it yet. But this human had already begun the real battle. Not against her power, but against the walls around her heart. And for the first time in her life, Lyra wondered, what if she didn't want to win? The suns rose blood-red over the desert of Zorath, and a heavy silence hung in the air. The Vakar camp was tense. Rumors had spread fast. Their untamed leader Lyra had grown close to the human prisoner. Some said she spoke to him in secret. Some said she smiled. But among warriors of Zorath, mercy was weakness, and weakness was death. For days, Lyra had ignored the whispers. She trained harder, fought longer, and kept her mind focused. But something inside her had begun to change. Ryan's words still lived in her heart like a quiet storm. Every time he spoke, she saw a reflection of herself she didn't want to face. A woman who was strong but also lost. That morning, her second-in-command, Varric, approached her tent. His steps were heavy, his voice cold. The tribe questions your leadership, he said. They say you protect the human. Lyra turned, her eyes sharp. Do you question me, Varric? He bowed, but there was fire in his voice. I question the path you walk. You used to destroy enemies. Now you speak with them. The people are watching. Lyra's grip on her blade tightened. Let them watch, she said. If they doubt my strength, I'll show them. Varric smiled slightly. Then prove it, my queen. Duel the human before the tribe. If he dies by your hand, no one will question you again. Her heart froze. A duel with Ryan? It would end either his life, or everything between them. That night, the wind howled through the canyons. The tribe gathered around the great arena of fire, where warriors proved their worth. Torches burned bright, and the air buzzed with excitement and bloodlust. Ryan stood in the center, calm as ever. He had refused armor and heavy weapons. All he carried was a short human blade, light, simple, nothing compared to Lyra's glowing energy swords. When she entered the arena, the crowd roared her name. She moved like a storm-given shape, her armor glinting under the alien moons. Her expression was cold, but inside her chest, her heart beat too fast. You don't have to do this, Ryan said quietly as she approached. Yes, I do, she answered, voice low but steady. They must see I am still strong? Ryan gave a sad smile. Strength isn't killing the truth, Lyra. Her eyes flickered. Then fight me, human. Show me your truth, the horn sounded. Lyra struck first, fast, fierce, precise. Sparks flew as her blade slashed through the air. Ryan barely dodged, the heat of her weapon brushing his skin. The crowd cheered her name, demanding blood, but Ryan didn't attack. He kept moving, reading her, watching her eyes instead of her hands. Every strike she made, he blocked or slipped past, never countering. It was like he wasn't fighting her, he was testing her. Why don't you fight back? Lyra shouted, angry now. Because I don't want to hurt you, he said. You're already bleeding inside. Her anger exploded. Enough! She swung both blades in a deadly arc, one aiming for his chest, the other for his neck. But in a single motion, Ryan ducked, twisted, and used his smaller blade to knock one sword from her hand. The crowd gasped. The great Lyra disarmed, her pride burned. She attacked again, faster, harder, each move filled with fury, but Ryan stepped in close, grabbed her arm, and turned her own strength against her. In a blur, she fell to the sand, pinned under his grip. Silence. The warriors stared in shock. Their queen, the untamed storm, lay defeated by a human's bare hands. Lyra's chest rose and fell. Her heart raced. She could have kicked him away, grabbed her weapon, but she didn't. She just stared up at him. "Why didn't you kill me?" she whispered. Ryan looked down, his voice soft but steady. "Because I didn't come here to win. I came here to show you that mercy doesn't make you weak." His words hit harder than any strike. For the first time, the crowd saw something strange. Their queen's expression changed. Not rage, not fear, something else. Varric stepped forward, shouting, "He insulted our leader." "Kill him!" the crowd began to chant. "Kill the human! Kill him!" Lyra rose slowly, her eyes glowing with fury, but not at Ryan. She turned on her people. "Enough!" she roared. The air shook. Even the fire seemed to bow. "No one moves," she commanded. Her voice carried like thunder. "This human fought with honor. He faced me without fear. None of you could do that," Varric sneered. "You defend him again? You've grown soft, Lyra." Lyra's blade was at his throat in a heartbeat. "Call me soft again and you'll never speak another word." The camp went dead silent. She turned to Ryan, her expression unreadable. "You've humiliated me before my people," she said. Ryan shook his head. "No, Lyra. You just proved you're more than a weapon." Her jaw clenched. "Go back to your cage before I change my mind." He didn't move. "You're afraid," he said softly. "Not of me, but of what you're becoming." Lyra took a step back. Her heart twisted painfully because he was right. She was afraid not of battle, but of herself. That night she stood alone by the cliffs again. The stars reflected off her armor like shattered glass. The sound of the duel still echoed in her mind. His words, his eyes, his mercy. Every part of her training told her mercy was weakness. Yet when Ryan spared her, she hadn't felt weak. She had felt something else, something she couldn't name, below the cliff. Ryan sat in his cage again, but his eyes were calm, as if he knew something she didn't. For the first time, Lyra whispered into the wind, "What are you doing to me, human?" The wind carried no answer, only the echo of her own question. But deep inside her chest, something had begun to break, the chains she never knew she carried, and far away, lightning lit up the horizon again, marking the beginning of a war not between planets, but between hearts. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt unsure of her place in the world she ruled. The duel had changed everything. The tribe still followed her, still feared her, but their eyes were different now. They had seen her hesitate. They had seen the human, Captain Ryan Hale, spare her life, and they had seen her let him live. In Zorath's warrior code, mercy was shame. But to Lyra, that moment hadn't felt like defeat. It had felt like truth. Still whispers spread through the camp like cold fire. "She's weak now," some said. "The human controls her," others whispered. Her second in command, Varric, didn't whisper, he shouted. "The queen forgets who she is," he told the soldiers. "She bows before an outsider." When Lyra heard it, she called him before the council. "I bow to no one," she said, her voice sharp as lightning. "And if any of you doubt that, step forward and die." No one moved. Even Varric looked away. But behind their silence, fear and anger grew. Lyra knew it. She could feel the weight of rebellion in the air. That night, as the camp slept, Lyra went to the human cage. Ryan sat inside, his arms resting on his knees, watching the alien moons drift through the black sky. "You shouldn't be here," he said without looking at her. "And yet I am," she replied softly. He turned to her, eyes calm, almost sad. "Your people hate me. They hate that you didn't kill me." "They don't hate you," she said. "They hate what you make me feel." Ryan smiled faintly. "And what's that?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked through the energy bars, her silver eyes reflecting the faint blue light. "Weakness," she said finally. "Or maybe something worse." Ryan leaned closer. It's not weakness, Lyra, it's choice. You're starting to see that strength isn't about fear. Her hand gripped the metal cage. You speak as if you understand me. I do, he said. Because I used to be like you, she frowned. A killer? He nodded slowly. A soldier who thought fighting was the only way to live. But after losing my team, I learned that sometimes saving one life is harder and braver than taking 100. Lyra's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like this, honest, simple, human. You would risk everything for one life? She asked quietly. Ryan smiled. I already have. Something in her heart twisted painfully and she looked away. You shouldn't speak like that. If they hear you, they'll execute you tomorrow. Ryan shrugged. Then at least I'll die for something true. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the alien wind whispered between them. Then without thinking, Lyra reached out and pressed her hand against the energy field. The barrier buzzed softly, glowing under her palm. Inside, Ryan did the same. Their fingers didn't touch, but the light between them pulsed brighter, as if it could feel what they felt. The next morning, everything changed. A messenger arrived from the Vakar king, the ruler of all tribes. His command was simple. The human must die at sunrise. His death will restore our queen's honor. Lyra stood in silence as the words echoed through the hall. Around her, warriors cheered, expecting blood. But inside her chest, something broke. When the messenger left, Lyra stormed out of the tent, her eyes burning with anger. She found Ryan surrounded by guards already being taken to the execution pit. Stop, she commanded. The soldiers froze instantly. The air trembled with tension. This man will not die, Lyra said. He is under my protection. Varric stepped forward, furious. You can't disobey the king's order. You'll doom us all. Lyra's voice was like thunder. Let the king come and tell me himself. Her words fell heavy over the crowd. The guards lowered their weapons but looked afraid. Defying the king meant death. Varric glared at her. You choose the human over your own people. Lyra stared back, her voice steady. I choose what's right. That night she led Ryan out of the camp in secret. The desert stretched wide and dark, glowing faintly under the moons. Alien winds howled across the dunes, carrying the scent of metal and storm. Where are we going? Ryan asked. To the edge of the world, she said. To a place where even the king's eyes cannot see. He walked beside her quietly. You'll be hunted for this, he said after a while. I know, she replied. But I would rather be hunted than hollow. He looked at her, admiration flickering in his eyes. You're risking everything for me. She stopped and turned toward him. No, Ryan, I'm risking everything because of you. There's a difference. They walked through the desert for hours until the horizon began to glow with the twin suns of dawn. The wind grew colder, sharper. Behind them, the sound of distant engines echoed. The king's hunters were already following. Lyra slowed and looked back. They'll find us soon, Ryan nodded. Then we make a stand. Lyra gave a faint smile. You speak like a warrior. And you, he said softly, speak like a human. For the first time, she laughed. A real, quiet laugh. It sounded strange on this planet, like something sacred and forgotten. When the first blast hit the sand near them, she didn't hesitate. Lyra drew her glowing blades, standing beside Ryan. Alien ships descended from the clouds and the hunters jumped out. Armored and armed, Ryan picked up a fallen weapon, ready to fight. Stay behind me, she shouted. Not this time, he said, firing back. They fought side by side, human and alien, against the king's men. The desert burned with fire and light. Lyra moved like the storm she was named for, cutting down enemies with speed and fury. Ryan fought with cleverness, covering her blind spots, saving her more than once. When the last hunter fell, silence returned. The two of them stood under the twin suns, covered in dust and firelight. Lyra turned to him, breathing hard. Why didn't you run? Ryan looked into her eyes. Because I told you I'd rather die for something true. She stared at him, speechless. For the first time, the untamed warrior didn't feel like a queen or a soldier. She felt alive. Above them, the suns rose higher, turning the sky gold. Lyra knew there was no turning back now. She had defied her king, her people, and everything she had ever believed in. But as she looked at Ryan, she realized something. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. The suns of Zorath blazed high over the desert, burning the sand into glass. Two figures moved through that endless wasteland. Lyra, Once the most feared warrior of her world and Captain Ryan Hale, the human who had become both her curse and her reason to live. They were fugitives now, hunted by the king's army, wanted by every tribe. And yet Lyra felt more free than she ever had before. The wind howled behind them like angry spirits. Smoke rose in the distance and the king's hunters were close. Ryan carried a small energy pack and a broken blaster, while Lyra led the way, her twin blades strapped to her back, glowing faintly through the dust. "How far is this place?" Ryan asked, his voice dry from thirst. Lyra pointed toward the horizon where dark cliffs cut through the light. "The caves of Zar, they're old. Older than my people. No one dares to go there. The ground itself rejects life." Ryan smiled weakly. "Then it sounds perfect." She glanced at him. He was pale, his steps unsteady. Humans weren't built for Zorath's air. The heat burned their lungs. The sand poisoned their skin. "You need rest," she said firmly. "We don't have time," he replied. "If we stop, they'll find us." "They'll find us anyway," she said. "At least face them alive." Without waiting for him to argue, she stopped near a sharp rock formation and pulled out a small energy canister from her belt. She set it down and a blue shield flickered around them, hiding their heat signatures. Ryan collapsed beside her, exhausted. Lyra handed him a small metallic flask. "Drink." He took a sip and coughed. "What is this?" "Purified plasma water," she said. "It will heal your lungs," he smirked faintly. "Tastes like battery acid." Lyra almost smiled. "You'll live." They sat in silence for a while. The desert wind blew across the dunes, whispering through the cracks of stone. For a moment there was peace. Strange, fragile peace. Then Ryan looked at her. "You didn't have to save me, Lyra. You could have killed me back there and stayed a queen." Lyra stared at the horizon. "I was a queen without a kingdom. All I ruled was fear. And fear dies fast." Ryan's voice softened. "So what do you rule now?" Her eyes turned toward him. "Hope." The peace didn't last long. A sharp sound cut through the wind, the scream of an approaching engine. Lyra jumped to her feet. "They've found us." From the sky, 2 hunter ships descended, firing plasma bolts into the sand. The blast shook the ground, throwing dust and fire into the air. "Move!" Lyra shouted. Ryan grabbed the energy shield and ran behind her as explosions followed them across the dunes. Lyra's eyes glowed with fury. She leaped onto a rock and hurled one of her blades at a ship, slicing through its engine. The craft spiraled and crashed in flames. The second ship fired again, the shockwave knocking Ryan to the ground. His blaster flew from his hand. Lyra ran to him, helping him stand. "Are you hurt?" "Only my pride," he said, coughing. "Good," she replied, eyes sharp. "You'll need it." The remaining hunters landed. 7 armored warriors emerged, their leader holding a staff with the king's insignia. His voice echoed through the desert. "Lyra of Vakar, you are charged with treason. Return with us now or die with the human." Lyra raised her remaining blade. "Come and take me," they charged. The fight was brutal and fast. Lyra moved like lightning, striking with perfect precision. Every movement was deadly, the mark of a warrior who knew no equal. Ryan fought beside her, covering her back with blaster shots, using the wreckage for cover. When one of the hunters aimed for Lyra's heart, Ryan threw himself in front of her. The plasma bolt hit his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "Ryan!" Lyra cried, rage flooding her veins. Something inside her broke open. The untamed storm that once terrified armies roared back to life. She screamed and charged, cutting through the remaining hunters like a hurricane of blue light. In seconds, it was over. The desert was silent again. Lyra dropped to her knees beside Ryan. His face was pale, blood soaking through his shirt. "Stay with me," she said, pressing her hand to the wound. Ryan smiled weakly. "I told you. I don't die easy." "Don't talk," she ordered. Her fingers trembled as she pulled a small crystal from her armor, an ancient healing stone used only by royal warriors. She placed it on his wound. A blue light spread through his body, sealing the burn, slowing the bleeding. When it was done, Ryan breathed easier. He looked at her, voice barely a whisper. "You risked your life for me again." Lyra met his eyes. "You did the same." He chuckled faintly. "Guess we're even now." "No," she said softly. "We're bound now." By nightfall, they reached the caves of Jar, black and deep, glowing faintly with strange alien crystals. Lyra helped Ryan inside, setting him down against the wall. "This place," Ryan said, looking around. "It's beautiful. It's cursed, she replied. Long ago, our ancestors hid their hearts here, the last of their emotions before they became warriors. They said the cave punishes those who still feel. Ryan smiled faintly. Then it will punish us both. Lyra didn't smile. She sat beside him, her armor cracked and her hands still shaking. For years, she had lived for war. Now she was bleeding for something else. Something she didn't understand. Something that terrified her more than any battle. You're quiet, Ryan said softly. I'm thinking, she replied. About what? Lyra looked at him, her voice low and full of truth. About how loyalty feels different when it's not forced. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. For a moment, the cave seemed to hum with energy, reacting to their touch. The crystals glowed brighter, reflecting light across the walls like living fire. Lyra whispered, Maybe this isn't a curse after all. Ryan smiled. Maybe it's the first honest thing your world has ever shown you. She looked at him, her silver eyes soft. Then I'll protect it, whatever it costs. Outside, the wind howled again, carrying the king's distant ships closer. The hunt wasn't over. Not yet. But as the cave glowed brighter, Lyra realized something important. The storm inside her heart was no longer her enemy. It had become her reason to fight. The wind outside the caves of Jar screamed like a living thing. Dust and fire rolled across the desert, and in the far distance the king's ships cut through the storm like metal shadows. Inside the cave, Lyra sat beside Ryan, who was finally sleeping. His shoulder wound was healing slowly, the glowing blue stone still faintly pulsing under his skin. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, slow, steady, human. Something so simple, yet more precious than anything she had known. For most of her life, Lyra believed hearts were weaknesses to be hidden, emotions were chains to be broken. But now, sitting in that silent cave, she realized her heart wasn't her enemy. It was the only part of her that still felt alive. Her thoughts were interrupted by a low hum, the sound of approaching engines. They've found us, she whispered. Ryan's eyes opened instantly. Then we run, he said, already struggling to his feet. No, Lyra replied. Running is over, he frowned. You mean? She stood, her armor glowing faintly in the cave's light. If we run, they'll never stop chasing us. If we fight, maybe the world will hear us. Ryan grabbed her arm. Lyra, you can't take on an army. She looked at him calmly. I was born in one. Minutes later, the king's army surrounded the cliffs. Hundreds of soldiers in black armor pointed their weapons toward the cave mouth. At the front stood Varric, Lyra's former second-in-command, now wearing the king's mark on his chest. He called out, his voice amplified through a speaker. Lyra of Vakar, you have betrayed your blood, your king, and your kind. Come out and surrender. Maybe he'll let you die quickly. Lyra stepped out of the cave entrance, the storm wind whipping through her white hair. I don't surrender, she shouted back. Not to cowards who hide behind orders, Varric sneered. Then you die with your pet human. Ryan came to her side before she could stop him. Funny, he said, his voice calm. You talk a lot for someone hiding behind 1,000 guns. Some of the soldiers shifted uneasily. Even surrounded, the human stood tall, fearless. Lyra raised her blade. Varric, I'll give you one chance. Leave now. He laughed. Still pretending to be queen? You're nothing but a traitor who fell for a weak creature. Lyra's eyes glowed silver. You're right about one thing, she said quietly. I fell. But not for weakness, or for something your kind will never understand. Varric's expression turned cold. Fire! The desert exploded. Blasts of plasma tore through the sand, shaking the cliffs. Lyra moved first, a blur of motion, her energy blades slicing through incoming fire. Ryan covered her from behind, using fallen weapons to shoot back. The sky burned with light. They fought as one. She was the storm. He was the calm inside it. Every time Lyra stumbled, Ryan was there, pulling her back, covering her side. Every time Ryan faltered, she became his shield. But the enemy was endless. More ships landed, soldiers pouring out like a flood. The ground cracked from the heat of plasma fire. Lyra, Ryan shouted. We can't hold them all. I know, she said, panting. That's not the plan, he frowned. Then what is? Lyra looked toward the largest ship, the king's personal war vessel, hovering in the distance like a dark god. I'm ending this. Before Ryan could stop her, she sprinted toward it, cutting through enemies as she ran. Lyra, wait. He shouted, but she was already gone, a flash of blue light tearing through black armor. Inside the command ship, the king waited. He was old, his skin marked with glowing veins of power. His eyes shone like molten gold. When Lyra burst through the door, the guards raised their weapons. She cut them down in seconds. Then she faced the king. "My daughter of war," he said calmly. "I gave you everything, a strength, power, glory. And you gave me shame." Lyra stood tall, her breathing heavy. "You gave me fear," she said. "And I gave it back." The king smiled faintly. "You've forgotten your purpose." "No," she said. "I've finally found it." She raised her blade. But before she could strike, the king lifted his hand. A surge of golden energy hit her chest, throwing her back. She crashed into the wall, gasping for air. "You think love makes you strong?" He growled. "It makes you weak. That human poisoned you." Lyra forced herself up, blood running down her face. "Then let me show you what poison can do," she charged. The clash shook the entire ship. Her blade met his power again and again, sparks of light bursting in every direction. He was powerful, too powerful, but Lyra didn't stop. Every time he struck her down, she rose again. Finally, he caught her by the throat, lifting her off the ground. "You're no daughter of mine," he hissed. "Good," she choked out. "Because I'd rather be human." Then she drove her blade into his chest. A blinding light filled the room. The king's scream echoed across the ship as the energy tore through him. When it was over, silence fell. The king lay motionless. Lyra dropped to her knees, barely breathing. Outside, the soldiers froze. The energy field around the king's ship collapsed. For the first time in history, the ruler of Zorath was dead. Ryan ran toward the wreckage, calling her name. He found her lying among the ruins, weak but alive. "You're insane," he said, helping her sit up. She gave a tired smile. "You're welcome," he laughed through tears. "You just killed a king." She looked at the sunrise breaking over the desert. "No," she whispered. "I killed fear." Ryan took her hand gently. "Then what now?" Lyra looked at him, her voice soft but sure. "Now I choose," he frowned. "Choose what?" She smiled faintly. "Who I want to be." As the first light touched their faces, the world changed. The tribes would soon come for her. The council would call her a traitor, but Lyra no longer cared. For the first time, she wasn't fighting for power, for pride, or for blood. She was fighting for something far stronger, a heart that finally knew peace. And deep inside her, the storm went quiet. The suns of Zorath rose slowly that morning, painting the sky gold and red. The battlefield was quiet now, no screams, no engines, no fire. Only the sound of wind moving through broken metal. The great king of Zorath was dead, and the war that ruled the stars had ended with him. But the world did not feel like victory. It felt like silence, the kind that comes after too much pain. In the middle of the ruined field stood Lyra, her armor cracked, her face streaked with dust and blood. Beside her, Captain Ryan Hale leaned against a broken pillar, one arm around his side. They had both survived, but at a cost neither could measure. "Your people will come," Ryan said quietly, watching the horizon. "They'll call you a traitor." Lyra nodded slowly. "They already do." "And when they arrive?" he asked. She looked toward the sky where ships were already approaching. Not soldiers, but small crafts carrying survivors, civilians, children. "Then I'll face them," she said softly. "But not as a queen, not as a warrior, as Lyra, one who finally learned what peace means." Ryan smiled faintly. "You think they'll understand?" Her silver eyes met his. "No, but one day, they will." When the survivors reached the field, the news spread fast. The king was gone. The great armies had fallen. And the untamed warrior, the woman they once feared, now stood unarmed before them. The warriors surrounded her, whispering, watching. Varek, her former second-in-command, stepped forward. His armor was scorched, his face pale from disbelief. "You killed him," he said. "You killed the king, you destroyed everything." Lyra stood still, her voice calm. "He destroyed himself." "I only ended his cruelty." Varek's eyes burned with rage. "You betrayed your blood." "Your tribe." "I betrayed a lie," she answered. "A world built on fear and power. I fought for something real and something greater," he sneered. "The human?" Lyra's voice softened. "Yes, the human who showed me mercy when no one else did." The human who made me remember that strength without kindness is nothing. Gasps moved through the crowd. Many looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Some saw truth in her words, others only shame. Varric stepped closer, raising his blade. Then die like a human. Before he could strike, a small figure ran between them. A young alien child, trembling but brave. Stop, the child cried. She saved us. She stopped the ships from burning the villages. Varric froze. The people murmured. Lyra looked down at the child, the same girl she had saved days before when the hunters attacked a nearby settlement. She had carried her through fire, risking her life. The people began to whisper differently now. She protected us. She fought the king. Maybe. She's not a traitor. Varric's eyes filled with doubt. His grip on the blade loosened. What do you want from us, Lyra? He asked bitterly. Lyra looked at the sky, the twin suns rising higher. I want you to stop fighting, she said. To stop killing for pride. To start living for each other. The words hung in the air like a strange, fragile promise. Later that day, the survivors buried their dead under the sands. Lyra and Ryan stood apart from the crowd, watching silently. You think peace will last? Ryan asked. Lyra gave a small, tired smile. Peace never lasts, but it always begins somewhere. He chuckled softly. You sound human. She turned to him, her eyes gentle. And you sound like a fool for following me into this mess. He grinned. Maybe, but it was worth it. They sat together on the rocks as the suns began to fade, painting the sky violet and orange. The air was cooler now. For once, the wind didn't carry the smell of war, only the scent of dust and life. Lyra looked at Ryan. Your people, they'll come for you one day. You'll go back. Ryan was silent for a moment. Maybe, but not yet. Why? She asked quietly. He smiled. Because I haven't finished what I came here for. Lyra raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Ryan looked at her with soft eyes. To show you that love isn't weakness. She froze, her heart beating faster. The warrior who had faced death 1,000 times suddenly couldn't find words. Love, she whispered. You're brave to speak that word here. Then it's time someone did, he said simply. Lyra laughed quietly, a rare, gentle sound. Humans are strange, Ryan smiled. Maybe that's what you like about us. As night fell, stars filled the alien sky. Lyra stood up, looking at the horizon, the vast desert stretching far beyond what eyes could see. This world will change, she said softly. With or without me. Ryan stood beside her. Then let it start with you. She turned to him, her hand finding his. You're a fool, Ryan Hale. And you're impossible, Lyra of Zorath. They both smiled. In the distance, the wind carried the faint voices of the tribes, no longer angry, no longer chanting for blood. Some prayed. Some built fires. Some simply watched the sky. The war had ended not with conquest, but with choice. Her choice. At dawn, Lyra stood on the same cliff where she once watched the storms alone. But this time she wasn't alone. Ryan stood beside her, watching the twin suns rise again. She whispered, For years I fought to prove I couldn't be tamed. But maybe freedom isn't about fighting at all. Ryan smiled gently. Maybe it's about choosing who you fight for. Lyra nodded slowly. Then I choose you. The wind lifted her white hair, glowing under the morning light. She wasn't a queen anymore, nor a weapon, nor a legend. She was simply Lyra, the warrior who had finally chosen love over fear. As the suns rose higher, their light spilled across the desert, touching the ruins, the people, and the world she had saved. And somewhere deep within her, the storm that had ruled her soul for so long finally fell silent.